So once again, good morning, and everyone, thank you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Today we are going to be talking about Azure Batch service and some of the key updates. I don't remember if we ever talk about this service in this session, but so we will do. Here is a quick agenda. Let me just go there. We will go a quick overview of Azure Batch service, what it is, some of the key use cases and scenarios, probably do a quick demo and then look at some of the key updates, um, uh, which is kind of making it more and more enterprise friendly. Okay. So with that, here is the Azure Batch service. Put simply, Azure Batch service allows you to run your extremely parallel tasks. So let's say that you need to process 1,000 images, just giving an example, and you need to, I mean, these are 1,000 images that you cannot run them, you can process them in parallel. Azure Batch is your friend because what it allows you to do is it allows you to get capacity on demand, run those jobs, kind of go from 1 to 100 VMs in a cluster, and you only pay for the VMs which you are running right there and then. You don't have to pay for, you just pay for per minute, usage. So that's kind of capacity. So basically, um, no need to install any cluster manager. It does all of it for you. You can bring your own images. So let's say that you have a VM image that is in your gallery, shared image gallery that you use, that you want to use to run those tasks. It has all the software, everything installed. You can use that. And at the same time, if there are other applications that you want to install on it, you can do that as well. So there is a lot of flexibility in this model. Okay. And once you create the batch service, there's no task for it. You only pay for the VM pools that you create in that batch service. Okay. And while the pools are running and processing tasks and you have VMs, allocated, that's when you actually pay for that. So that's the main thing. As I said, the key part in the batch service are the batch pools, and you can create multiple pools. You can have some pools. So let's say there are some of the tasks that always running. There's data coming in. This is coming to some queues or something, and you want to run constant batch jobs to process that data. So you may have a pool with dedicated resources. And then you may have some pools with resources which are only allocated on demand. They're kind of think of it auto scaling. You can do that as well. So in that scenario, your bad jobs kind of follow kind of a rule or something, and based on that rule, they will scale up or scale down, and you can pick different types of VMs. As I said, whatever suits for your application, you can have as I said, you can have a custom image as well from a shared image gallery, and you can go from there. So that's um, that's how you do it. And this service has gone through a lot of transformation. Initially, it was using the classic model, the cloud services, but it has that has been deprecated. Now it's using VM scale set behind the scenes, so all of that. So, and there are, as I said, we will talk about a few updates, in the next few slides, which are kind of very enterprise friendly, make it very appetizing for enterprises to adopt it. Here is how this service works. We will look at the demo as well, but here is how it works. You have Azure Batch, and there are three concepts that you need to keep in mind. Pool, which is a set of VMs basically, which can be allocated through auto allocated, or you can have a dedicated pool. Okay, those are doing the task processing. Then you have the job. Job is a set of tasks. It can have 100. You can do it from the portal, and we'll see a demo. You can through it the code. through do it through the code. There are SDKs available, and each, as I said, each job can have 1 to n millions of tasks, and those are distributed. They are picked up as soon as a VM is done with one task. It will pick another. So that's how they do kind of parallel processing. As you can see here, these are first of all. I mean, you can upload input files or any data that you want into the storage account, and then you create the pool, the job, the task, and the next thing is those tasks start downloading this any inputs from the storage account where you have uploaded that, and then start uploading the data that is the output files, and that's kind of how this circuit complete. In the end, you can download all of that, all of those files, output files, which is the output of the batch process, and start something, do something useful with it. So that's kind of at a high level this how this service works. Any questions so far? Okay. Some of the key scenarios. I mean, to be honest, um, as you can look through the slide, all of these scenarios kind of makes perfect sense. I mean, you have image processing, thousands of images coming in, and you need to process that. Maybe you want to extract text. Maybe you are looking for certain anomalies in those image. All of that, that's perfect for that rendering. Yeah, that's when you are doing some sort of CGI. I mean, you're processing that. That's a perfect use case. Then you have use cases like deep learning or media transcoding. And so, wherever, to be honest, wherever you see parallel tasks that can be tasks that can run in parallel sitting in a queue, that's where you should think about using Azure Batch. You know, so that's pretty much it about the kind of a quick overview. So it's demo time. So let's take a look at a quick demo. I'm going to show, and we'll come to this error. This is a very important error, and we'll take a look at it. Let's start by creating a Azure Batch account. And I just want to mention a few things when you're creating it. So let's start with that. I hope everybody can see my screen. Let me increase the size a little bit. Batch service. So I'm going to create an account. A few things that you need to be aware of. So you have a batch service. I'm going to pick a subscription and L. And by the way, this is important. There is a assigned quota for your account. You have to check that. Currently, I have a quota of one account per batch account, one batch account per region. Okay. And you can request to increase that, definitely. But at the same time, you have that quota will be applicable to you. So in this case, I cannot do it in South Central since I already have that. I'm just gonna pick some region, you know. So NZ demos 001. I'm just gonna name this account. This screen, basically, you just have to pretty much boilerplate information, but this is important, the region. If you are thinking that you need multiple batch accounts in a particular region, look at the quota. What is that? If it is that quota is not there, then you may want to request increase in quota or go to a different region. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Advanced. This is the identity type. This is important. So let's say that in your while your jobs are running, you need to get some information from some other sources, like maybe some keys from Key Vault for data encryption or secret or whatever. In that case, you may want to use managed identity. So you can think about either using the system managed identity or user managed identity. So that's in for that those scenario. Public network access and private. So by default, public network access is enabled. So you can access that account from Azure portal from anywhere. If you disable it, then you cannot access your batch account. You can create it, but you cannot access it. You can only access it from private endpoint, and we will take a look at it in a minute. So just hold on to those questions about uh, public access enabled and disabled. The third one is pool allocation mode. This is important. If you use the batch service mode, then it's gonna create the VMs in the Azure batch service subscription that is there. And there is a different quota that applies to it. Okay. If in some cases, if you have an MSDN subscription, that quota may be zero. Okay. If you use user subscription, in this case, it's gonna take the vCPU quota for your Azure subscription. So let's say you have a vCPU quota for D2, D2S series or 100, then it's going to use that quota. So you cannot create more than 100 VMs of that type. Think of it in those terms. Okay. So just, uh, and by the way, if you're using batch service, you can request a quota increase, but just keep that in mind. Because if you create a batch account and you just pick the batch service and you did not request an increase in quota, or your quota is the default zero, then you will start getting errors and you will not sure what's going on. It says, yeah, quota is reached and things like that. So just make sure to pick, I should say, choose wisely. So make sure you choose wisely. um, Next is this authentication model, task authentication and Active Directory. So these are the two models. I mean, both are selected. There is no reason to, normally you want to go with Directory model unless until you are doing some stuff with some resources which do not talk to AD. Other than that, you should be okay. Okay, if you select user subscription, a few things you will have to do. Number one, you will have to select a key vault. Okay, so I'm gonna go here and okay, so there are no key vault available in this region, but you will have to select a key vault. Second thing, you will have to give Azure Batch service contributor access to your subscription because it's going to be creating VMs in your subscription. Okay. So you need to give it that access. Okay. So it will be creating resources in your subscription. It is not in the Azure Batch subscription. So though that service principal has to have access in your contributor access to your subscription. Okay. So this is just keep that in mind because that if you don't do it, it will not create the batch account. But with that, once you create it, it takes a minute to create a batch account because, and by the way, once you create a batch service account, as I said, there is no charge to it. It's just there. If you have created Key Vault and those resources, there may be a charge for those. I mean, depending on what resource you have created, but there is no charge for the service itself at that moment. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to a service that we already have created, and then we will talk about it. Let me refresh this. So we already have a service that is here. I have already created. I mean, you have all the other stuff. Let's look at the quota. So this is the quota, 300, 100, 1. And as you can see here, the batch pool has a user subscription. In this case, vCPU quota for your batch subscription are enforced. So basically, um, whatever account subs I mean, where whatever subscription that you have created the batch in, that's the quota that will come into picture. So if you want to take a look at the quota, as it says, go to the usage and quota page on and take a look at it. What is that quota to find out how many VMs you can create? This is the identity. I haven't created an identity. This is the storage account. So you can create a storage account. That's where you will put any files or any stuff that you need for your applications to use. And oh, by the way, just keep in mind one thing I forgot to mention. A um, if you have picked a uh, model, let's say you public access model or private access model for your batch account, you cannot change it. So you have to recreate that account. So let's say you pick public, you cannot change it to private, vice versa. If you create it private, you cannot change it to public. So once again, choose wisely. Okay. These are the application. As I said, no storage account is configured. Basically, that's where you can put binaries of the application. So when your task run, it can get those binaries and start installing and start running. So let's say you want to install some application before you start processing those tasks. So it will download those applications from here. They can be node applications, they can be task-based applications as well. So just keep that in mind. Okay. In regards to pool, as you can see, I have one pool. What you do is you just say, let's create a pool. I just want to show you the pool experience, how to create it. Um, Once again, what is the identity? You can do is none or user assign. And then this is the image type. As you can see, there are two types which are deprecated. The one is marketplace and the custom image. So most of the time you're going to be using a custom image. Most organization which are using, they have their custom images and they use those images for this. But I mean, both options are there. You pick that, then you pick like whatever um, server you want to use. Let's say I want to use or small disk, and then you encryption configuration, how you want to encrypt OS disk, temporary disk. Do you want ephemeral OS disk with it? All of that you can configure. Okay, and then this is the size of the VM. So you here. So once you pick the image, and then you have the size of the VM, what VM that you want to use. Please note that that's where your quota will be applied. So you can make sure whatever VM you pick, you have a quota for it. Okay. So, I mean, let's keep the default setting. Then you have the target uh, dedicated node. And this is like how many nodes that you need. Do you need any low priority nodes? And this is the uh, I mean, spot nodes, basically, the spot VMs, these are the extra capacity that Azure has in all data center region that is available for you to use at a much cheaper price, but at the same time, that can be taken away if we need other users who want to use that capacity. So let's say that capacity is there. Let's say somebody want to auto scale, or I mean, let's say you're growing your uh, resources and you want to add more VMs, then that will come from that capacity. But so as I said, that capacity will be there. You can use those VMs here, but just be aware of the spot VM. You should kind of read about it. I don't want to spend too much time on spot VMs, but um, you may want to have like a steady state level, and then okay, I want to have at least three nodes, and but at the same time, if I want to have three spot VMs as well, so I can get better throughput. But if those three VMs go away, I'm okay with going back to three fixed nodes. So that's one thing. Um, and then you have start task, and this is basically maybe a task to refresh everything. Task slot per node. You can increase if there are smaller tasks, you can put more tasks on a particular nodes and things like that. What are different user accounts there? All of that information is there if the nodes need to intercommunicate. So kind of very flexible. On the other hand, look at this. You have fixed and you have auto scale. In the case of auto scale, what you will have to do is you have to provide a formula, and there is a kind of a different syntax to it. And what it will do is it can query a queue, or it can query a file storage or something. And based on that, it can decide, okay, there are 10,000 messages in a queue. If there are more than 10,000 messages in a queue, then we need to add more capacity, things like that, as we are processing messages from that queue. So whatever that is, you will have to provide a formula there for this thing to auto scale. Okay. So that's that. I mean, you kind of create the pool. Once the pool is created, it will spin up VMs over there. I think I already have a pool. Let me show you. This is a demo pool. Right now, there are kind of no VMs over there. So what I can do is I can do a job here to create a quick job, and it will ask me to select a pool. I'm going to select this pool. Um, okay, and then I can add a task to it. So I'm going to do a do, and I'm going to enter a command line. I mean, task can be as sophisticated, and for sake of simplicity and easy demonstration, I'm using Portal. Most of the time, you're going to be using relevant SDK to do that. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to pick that. I'm going to do a submit, and now the task is submitted. The job is submitted, and it will be picked up by one of the um, nodes which is processing. And it seems like let's see, hang on. So yeah, that task is it seems like it's complete. So basically, that is the output that is showing. So as you can see, that's how this thing simply runs. So let's any questions so far? And if there are any questions in the chat window, I will appreciate if somebody can read them, as I cannot see the chat window at the moment.
This question in the chat, Chris, do you want to go off mute, or I'm happy to read it out at this time?
Yeah, hey, how's it going? This is Chris. Thanks for the demo. It's super informative. So from the solution perspective, do we have any solution accelerators that would say show for my FSI clients an example of using Batch to say like do some form recognizer on a bunch of documents, for example, or any solutions that we can?
I'm not aware of it. I mean, since we are talking about public domain, there may be some kind of a built-in capabilities there. I saw some of the samples which talk about this plus cognitive services, or this means batch service plus functions, or batch service plus cognitive services, things like that.
I'll take a
yeah,
look,
probably
and if I
that.
find
Yeah.
anything, I'll put some in
Yeah.
the I'll send them to you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Great. Okay, so let's quickly go back to some of the things. So we already talked about batch support for Spot VMs. Okay, there you will see low priority VMs, but low priority VMs are being deprecated. Spot VMs are taking their place. So you can use Spot VMs. Want to have extra capacity on demand, or development and testing, or where you have flexible execution time, so basically what you want to do is you don't want to I mean, you're not tied to the time limit. If with Spot VMs you can complete it in a shorter time, that's good, since it's kind of a lesser cost. But you if there are no Spot VMs, it may take a little bit longer, and you're okay with it. In that scenario, definitely Spot VMs make sense. Okay. And I am. The reason is I think I'm going to switch back to the slide deck sorry, demo as well. So I'm just go ahead.
There's a question from the chat, Naveed, if you want to take that.
Please.
What's the benefit of using Batch versus ARM template specs?
ARM template is basically your infrastructure as code. Batch service is for parallel task processing. So they are kind of a totally different things. ARM services ARM templates you're going to be using when you want to spin up resources, um, and you want to use a kind of a consistent model. So that's where you want to use. So it's kind of a, you can code your infrastructure. On the other hand, batch is for processing, parallel tasks. So I think they are kind of a different. I hope clarifies it.
Navid, thank you. This is Len speaking. I posted this question. So basically, to paraphrase what you said, it's more like a puppet, right? More like a DSC when I'm using batch, right? Like
Yeah,
I already provisioned something. Now I need to configure it. So this is when I would use batch.
no, I mean, when you have, I mean, mostly for parallel tasks. If you have a lot of tasks that you can process in parallel, batch is your friend. If you
Gotcha.
need to deploy infrastructure in a very consistent manner, that's where you use ARM templates because you can code it, you can take that code, add some parameters to it, and deploy it again and again.
Thank you.
Okay, so quickly, want to talk about Azure Batch private link support. This is one of the key things, enhancement that has been made. It's in GA. What it allows you to do is allow you to access Azure Batch over private endpoint. And when I was showing the screen, I showed you this. This is an error. This is a account that I have created. This is a private batch account. I cannot access it from my machine since it's in a private, I can only access it through private endpoint. So what I have done is I have created a private endpoint connection in a VNet. That's where I'm running a VM. So that's the VM. And if I access the same account from that VM, as you can see, I can access it. Yes, I'm getting some errors, but they are not relevant. That's where I can access it because I have private endpoint connectivity from that VNet to this batch account. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is very important. If you go with private, then you will have to make sure that you create a private endpoint and do that all that connectivity stuff. There are some limitation. Of course, you have pretty standard private endpoint stuff. That you have to have a DNS zone and all that. So quickly, I mean, I know we have 1 more minute, so I'm just going to go a little bit fast. Simplified communication model. Before, if you were deploying your nodes in a virtual network, you can deploy them in a virtual network. You have to set up NSGs, outbound and inbound, for communication with batch management because batch management used to talk, and there you have to open ports for storage. That was a big kind of a ask from organization. They consider it as a data exfiltration risk. So, they are moving with a simplified model, which is on the right-hand side. And as you can see, just compare the NSG. There are no inbound NSGs required, and the only outbound NSG is going to the batch node management service stack. So that is a big enhancement. Right now, you have to open a support ticket. There is a guideline there. Look at that. I have the link there. If you are using a batch service and you're deploying the nodes in a VNet, uh, you know, you can opt into that model, and that will simplify your communication. Okay. So with that, any question? I know we are right on time.
No questions on the chat, Navid.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for your time, folks, and hope to see everybody next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. And have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Navid.
Thank you.
Thank you.